When it comes to Christmas season, there are a lot of traditions. There are a lot of things that you do around the Christmas time, whether that's making cookies, whether that's just spending time with your family. Who still goes out looking at Christmas lights? Anybody that still go look out? I like Christmas lights. You might go out, travel, find some cool Christmas lights or Christmas shows to go watch. But I love Christmas traditions. They're my favorite. But one of my favorites growing up was just hearing Christmas stories. I don't know what family you grew up in, but my grandpa would we would go over to his house when we were teeny tiny, and he would literally do what Dom did. We would all gather by him by the chair, and he would read us a Christmas story, and we would watch Christmas movies. I just love Christmas stories. They're my favorite. I love them. And what we decided to do with this whole idea of our series, A Christmas Story. Who knows, who's watched the Christmas Story movie? That's a solid one. That's a solid one. If you haven't, go watch it. But what we're doing with this series is we wanted to take some classic Christmas stories, stuff we grew up with, and pick them apart, figure out what we can learn from them, attach them to biblical truth, and just have some fun because it's Christmas season. Are we good with that? Can we let loose a little? Have some fun a little? We're going to have, I don't even know, I think we're having waffles after service tonight. So you got cookies, so we're good. We're sugared up. We're good to go. We're going to hop into it. Obviously, tonight, we are starting with the Christmas classic of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. What a good one. It's so funny. We were talking about this in the office, and to this day, no matter how old you are, the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer song can come on, and you know that part where it's I don't even know what I'm saying, where it's the kids scream out on the other part, trying to remember it now. What? Oh yeah, Rudolph had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glowed. Everyone knows that. Wow, give that for yourselves. Incredible job, incredible. We all know it. It's a Christmas classic, but in case you just slept under a rock and you weren't listening to the story, quick recap. Rudolph, he was a reindeer. He had a nose that glowed. It was red, and all the other reindeer made fun of him until Santa said, "Oh, I need you to lead my sleigh because it's a foggy night. And I need to be able to see." So Rudolph led the sleigh for Santa. Everything was fantastic. Rudolph went down in history as the greatest reindeer of all time. And that's, in a sense, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Beautiful. So we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the story. And did you know that Rudolph, the original, let me get it right. The original story came out in 1939. That's old. That's an old story, but still being told to this day, which I think is awesome. It's a great story. But what we're going to learn tonight, if you're taking notes, you got your little note things on your chairs. Title of the message tonight is to dare to be different. Dare to be different. Look to your neighbor and say, dare to be different. As you're writing it, dare to be different. I'm sure all of you have, but who's played the classic game of Truth or Dare before? It's a dangerous game, everyone. Just terrible. I look back at playing that game, and I don't even know if you should play that game. It's just bad. You see, what I learned quickly on is that my friends just hated when I played this game because I was the person that anytime I was asked truth or dare, I would always say truth because I'm not doing some idiotic thing. I'm an open book. I'll just tell you the truth. And they would always get so mad at me and call me a wimp. But I knew, I got smart, that if you say dare, one of two things is either going to happen. One, you're either going to do something extremely humiliating, or you're going to do something extremely stupid that you shouldn't do. It's one of the two things. It's never something normal because that's not the point of doing a dare. In fact, I was looking up stupid stories of people playing truth or dare. True story I found of someone that said they played truth or dare as kids. They were a group of boys. I think they were middle school, maybe early high school. And they dared one of their friends. They went outside, middle of winter. They dared one of their friends to take his shoes off and to run across the middle of the road and to run back in freezing weather. Whatever that sounds stupid, but harmless. Basically, long story short, the kid gets hit by a car. Literally gets hit by a car. Well, you can read this story. I Googled it. I don't know if it's completely true, but I Googled it. He gets hit by a car. He's alive. I would not tell you a story about a kid that dies. That'd be bad. He's alive, but he did have to spend time in the hospital. He broke a lot of things. But the dare led to something stupid. But the reality of dares, the reality of truth or dare, is the reason we put ourselves in positions like that is honestly, even though you're like pushing yourself to like do something dumb, really the opposite of that is harder, like deciding not to do what you're dared to do. Because what you want to do is do what your friends are telling you to do so that you fit in. Because you know if they tell you to do something and you say no and you back out, like they're going to make fun of you, like they're going to laugh at you and you're going to get a lot of ridicule because you didn't do the dare and you're just a wimp for not doing it. So in reality, when it comes to the idea of daring to be different, the harder dare, the more difficult dare to take is the dare to say, no, I'm going to be different from the culture of my world, to be different and not step in, not to blend in with what other people want me to do, but I want to take a different type of dare that says, I want to be unlike the world. I want to be unlike my culture, unlike my people that are surrounded with the things of this world. I want to be different. That is a dangerous type of dare to take, but one that has a lot more positive outcomes for you in the end. So that's what we're going to be diving into tonight, because when you're daring to be different, what you're doing is you are stepping into an uncomfortable zone of your life. You're stepping into uncomfortability. No one likes to be uncomfortable, but here's the thing. If you want to be better, if you want to learn to be a better person, a better leader, a better Christian, if you want to grow in your life, growth follows becoming uncomfortable. If you want to grow, you got to get uncomfortable. I think that's like your first fill in the blank there, if I'm right. Yes. I think. Boom. Growth follows becoming uncomfortable. If you want to do something different, if you want to be better, then it's going to take you having to say, you know what, I got to get a little uncomfortable. I've got to grow. It happens everywhere in your life, not just in your Christian walk. Like, for example, who would say that they have they don't like public speaking. Like, they don't like speaking in front of crowds. Like, that's okay. That's a normal thing for people to not like. Like, you don't like when you have to do presentations in front of class, that kind of stuff. Well, if you were to talk to anybody that would tell you how to get better with public speaking, what are they probably going to tell you to do? You have to what? Do it. You got to speak in front of people. You're never going to grow if you stay comfortable. You're never going to learn how to speak in front of people if you just decide never to do it. You're never going to get better at your sport if you don't get uncomfortable with the way that you prepare and you work out and you gain muscle. You're never going to grow if you just sit back and think, well, growth is just going to come to me because I'm going to get older. That's the dumbest thing you could do. Just because you get older doesn't mean you're growing. You have to put effort into behind it. You have to learn how to push yourself to be a little bit more uncomfortable in situations that you're in, to be proactive with how you grow as a person and how you grow as a follower of Jesus. They all go together and interact together. But of course, being uncomfortable is not fun. It's not easy. What does the Bible say about it? Romans 12:2 says to don't copy the behavior and customs of the world. I love what the Message translation puts this. In the Message, it says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you. He develops well-formed maturity in you. You see, it's way too easy for you to become adjusted to culture because it's easy. You're around it all the time. It's not difficult for you to slip into becoming what the normal is around you. You have to be able to say, no, I don't want to become adjusted to my culture. I want to step out and be different from the people around me. That is what God has called me to do. That is what God has called me to be as a person. But like I said, being uncomfortable is not fun. So how do you train yourself? How do you step into a season of your life where you're daring to be different? How do you take yourself, your mental, your state, how do you view yourself in order to be different, in order to live a different type of lifestyle? Well, tonight we're going to dive really quick into the story of Daniel. A lot of you know the story, but I love Daniel because I think he is the picture of what it means to dare to be different, to not be adjusted into a culture he's put into, but to step aside and say, I'm going to be in this area, but not of this area, and I'm going to show you how to do it. I love the story of Daniel for so many reasons. So we're going to hop into it tonight for just a few moments and give you 2 points, and then we'll be done. So looking at the story of Daniel, really quick recap from the beginning. Daniel was just a young boy. They say he was about a teenager when Babylon attacked his town, raided his town. He was taken alongside a lot of other young boys. They were taken back into Babylon to basically rip them from their home and say, no, now you have to work in our culture. You have to work in our hometown and be not just slaves, but just be in our Babylonian culture. So what they did is they took the boys from the town, they dragged them into Babylon, into one specific area, and the first thing that they would do to these boys is they would change their names, which sounds really weird, but basically the culture back then, it was almost like a brainwashing assimilation process, because back then your name meant everything. Your name had meaning behind who you were. So what they would do is they would take these Jewish boys' names, change them into Babylonian names, if you will, to try to change who they were and change their identity. So for example, with Daniel's name, another fill in the blank on your thing, Daniel's name literally means God is my judge. That's what his name means. Now his name was switched to Belteshazzar, beautiful name, but that name means Bel protect the king. Bel protect the king. So basically what they were doing is they were looking at Daniel and saying, I know that your name, your identity is attached to the God that you serve, because your name literally means God is my judge, I follow God, but we're going to rip that away from you and put on a new identity on you that says, no, it's not God is my judge, it's Bel protects the king. Your priority is protecting the Babylonian king. Your priority is protecting our culture. They were trying to change his identity. And you're going to hear very quickly how Daniel responds to that, how he doesn't allow his identity to be changed just because someone tries to rip it away from them. And it's something that you and I need to understand, that obviously our real names aren't changing, but this is what society and culture wants to do to you. It wants to change your identity, who you are, and mold it and shape it into what they believe is what you should do. Not what you believe you should do, what they believe that you should do. So how does Daniel respond? The first thing that we have to understand tonight, in order to have a dare to be different type of mentality, first thing you have to do is to know who you are. When it comes to your identity, you have to know who you are, because you are not going to escape the criticism. You are not going to escape people trying to attack who you are or trying to change your identity. So the first thing you have to understand is, I need to know who I am in order to be able to respond to the people around me. Daniel's name was significant. It held meaning. Like I said, it said, God is my judge. They tried to change his name. They tried to rip it away from him like they did all the other boys back in these days when they raided his hometown, brought these boys to Babylon. They changed all their names. Now, Daniel had a choice. They brought these boys into like a basic dining area, and they gave all the boys food. But the problem was, back then, they would bless the food basically by praying and like sealing the food with the false idols that they prayed to. So the food was basically not holy, if you will, for the men back there in Jerusalem. So they knew that the food wasn't good. And not only that, they were also serving these boys food that was prohibited by God's law back in the day. So he knew he wasn't supposed to eat the food. His name was changed, his identity changed, and so Daniel had to make a choice on how he was going to respond, if he was going to remember who he was. Daniel 1:8. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore, he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. Basically, he was asking him, please don't make me eat this food. Now, here's the problem. This was not like I'm just not going to eat kind of decision. These boys were not known to this culture. These boys were being set up to be like dispersed across the city to be used for jobs. So if Daniel didn't eat, obviously, if you don't eat, your body starts to wither away. you start to lose muscle, you start to look a little bit scrawny. And boys back then, they couldn't look scrawny. Daniel was basically putting his life on the line by saying, I don't want to eat this food because I know who I am, and that's okay with me. I'm going to put my life on the line and say, no matter what happens, I believe who my God is. And so the eunuchs, the people were like, who is this guy? Why is he refusing to eat? And Daniel takes it a step further, and he says, because they question him, they're like, you got to eat. And so Daniel takes it a step further and says, you don't understand, basically, who I serve. You don't understand who I am and who the God that I pray to. You don't know who I pray to. And this is how he takes it a step further. Daniel 1:12-13. He says, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you. And deal with your servants according to what you see. You see, he had so much confidence in who he was, the God that he served, and he said, I could literally eat only vegetables and watch how my body responds to it versus the men who just eat the king's food and whatever you give them, all the protein, all the meat, all the dairy and the wheat and the bread, which obviously should make them better, stronger men versus him who ate like carrots all day. So that should be a no-brainer, but Daniel says, no, I'm going to put my God to the test because I know who I am and I know who I serve. And this was the response in Daniel 1:15. At the end of the 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. Daniel didn't do that. It was God. But the reason he knew who he was so confidently, he said, I can step out and do the most crazy thing. But I know who I am. I'm steadfast in who I am. You can look at me weird. You can say I'm crazy. But honestly, you're crazy for not understanding the strength that my God has, the strength of who I am in God and my identity in God, that you are going to be blown away by what just a little bit of faith does. And people looked at that and they were amazed. Like, what is this guy? Who is this God that he follows? And it was because Daniel's identity was not shifted. It did not change just because someone else tried to change who he was. He stayed steadfast and said, no, I know who I am. And the same thing goes for you. You have to ask yourself, do I know who I am? If people were to look at me differently, if people were to pressure me, peer pressure is huge. Look back to a time where you felt some peer pressure. What did you choose? That'll tell you where your identity lies. If you succumb to peer pressure easily, you're human. You make mistakes, obviously. But take that check inside to say, do I need to reevaluate who I put my identity in and how much I stand on that? And if I care too much about what people think about me, their opinion of me, their response of me, or do I care more about what God thinks of me? Do I care more about if I'm following the path that God has? And if that's the path that you're following, it will never run dry. You will never fail because that is the path that Daniel ran, and we see it over and over in his story because the enemy kept trying to attack who he was, but he remained steadfast. That's such an important thing for you to understand is that the enemy wants to attack your identity. The enemy wants to attack your identity. That's the first thing he will go for. Why is it the first thing he goes for? It's because if the enemy has your identity, he has everything. He is the way you act. He is the way you behave. He has your future. He has your future career in mind. If he attacks who you believe you are, then he has it set for the rest of your life. That is the first thing you have to protect if you want to dare to be different and step away from the crowd and actually be who God created you to be. You got to know who you are and know that's the first thing that the enemy wants to go after. If he has your identity, he has everything. So know who you are. And the second thing that you need to know to dare to be different is to know why you are here. Not only know who you are, but know why you're here. If you know the story of Daniel, you obviously know this second half, but there came a pivotal moment in Daniel's life where he realized, no, my removal of my town, my placement in Babylon, that wasn't an accident. And he looked at his story, he looked back, and it was amazing what God did in his life. You see, as Daniel continued to live in Babylon, he started gaining esteem with the king and with the high rulers of the area. They loved Daniel because he was awesome. And they started to give him tasks and responsibilities because he was doing a great job. In fact, at one point, Daniel had basically been given authority over a large portion of land in Babylon. Everything was going great for Daniel. And not only was he doing amazing things, he was also staying true to who he was. It said that Daniel every single day would go upstairs in his house. He would go 3 times a day and pray to God. So he did that while also being a great worker and working for the king, but he kept his relationship with God strong. Now, the king obviously noticed Daniel, how amazing he was, and he was so pleased with Daniel, he was getting ready to set Daniel over the entire kingdom. But the other rulers, they didn't like that. And so they started looking at Daniel and saying, man, we got to get him. We got to figure out a way to plot against Daniel to try to get him charged with something. But when they looked at Daniel, they're like, there is nothing wrong with this dude. Like, he's trustworthy, he's loyal, he's a hard worker. Like, there's nothing we can charge him with. So what did they do? They went after the one thing that made Daniel different than them. The one thing that was set apart from Daniel, and that was his faith. And they got the king to accept a new law in the land that if anyone were to pray to any god other than the king, they had to be thrown into a den of lions, basically to be mauled to death. That was the new law that was placed. And so here comes Daniel. And he's looking at this situation. He's saying basically like, God, what do I do, right? Like, I have done all of this great work. I've been removed from this city. I know who I am. But now I'm placed in this situation where literally my life is on the line if I continue to push and be different from the culture that I live in. This was the decision that he was placed with. But this is his response, Daniel 6:10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. You see, Daniel, he dared to be different. He said, even if my life is on the line, I'm going to dare to step away and still do what God has called me to do. Because he knew in that moment, God, I know why I've been placed here. It's not just to do my job or to work hard. My job is to be different. My job is for people to look at me and see something new. For me to keep praying and for me to be a light in this town, in this city. Like, I know why I've been placed here. He had a purpose and there was a reason why he was there. And of course, a lot of you know the story. We hear it a lot growing up, but basically he was caught praying. They took him away. They threw him into the den of lions. Daniel prayed in the den of the lions. He prayed and God sent angels that shut the mouths of the lions. Daniel wasn't injured. Daniel got removed out of the den. The king was there. They were rejoicing because they were so happy Daniel was okay. And get this. This is the best part of the story. After Daniel was saved, it wasn't the fact that Daniel was saved. It was the fact that Daniel was pulled out of the lion's den. The king of the entire land saw what Daniel's God did, and he turned around at his people and said, surely this is the true God. Surely Daniel follows the real king, the real God. You see, Daniel was a great man, but that day he learned why he was there. He learned that I am there not only to show to be different, not only to be, outside of the culture, but his faith, his dare to be different led to an entire city realizing who the true God was. An entire city. For his purpose to step out and say, I'm going to get a little uncomfortable. I'm going to take a big risk, but I know who I am. I know why I'm here. And if I know those 2 things, then God's with me. An entire city was changed. Where you are right now, Albuquerque, New Mexico, your school, your home, your specific classes that you're in. We say this a lot, but I want you to hear it tonight. Where you are placed, your placement is not an accident. It's not. If you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to do big things for God. What am I supposed to do? Well, look where he's placed you. Don't look for this giant big thing to happen. Create something in your classroom. Create something in your home. Create something with your friends that you are with on a daily basis. Take the dare to be a little different. To say, I'm gonna step out and say, you know what? I want to see what happens if I decide not to make this year normal. And just see what happens. Test God and say, God, I'm gonna step out. And I need you to meet me where I'm at. I need you to help me, because there's a dare to be different. There's a dare to step out, because the way that he created you, how uniquely he created you, it's your difference that'll change your world. It's your difference that'll change your town and your home and your school. That's exactly what we heard in the basis of the entire story of Rudolph. The thing that made Rudolph different was the thing that saved Christmas. And the thing that makes you different is the thing that God has placed on your life to make a difference in the area that he's put you. But sometimes we hide it. Sometimes we ignore it. But God is calling you to say, no, take a dare. Take a dare. And try something new this year. So what does a dare to be different look like in your life? What can you do this week to dare to be a little bit different? Maybe for you, it's just making a routine in the morning where you actually put God first. It's difficult. But what if that's your dare to be different? You say, God, for once, I'm actually going to wake up and think of you first before my breakfast or before my phone. Just try it. Dare to be different. Because I'm telling you, being like everyone else is not what it's cracked up to be. Dare to be different. Or maybe for you, you need to take a step further and get a little bit more uncomfortable. What if you started a thing at school where before you guys ate lunch, you prayed? That's kind of weird. That's a little uncomfortable. Growth comes with uncomfort. Dare to be different. To start something in your friends in your school, whether that might be a Bible club at your school or hanging out and talking about God. It's not weird. It's just culture that tells you it's weird. But it's not God. Dare to be different. Tonight, if you could stand up for me, we're going to end tonight. And we're going to sing one more song of worship before we finish. And the song is called Available. I love this song. And I love the premise behind it. Get your attention real quick. Shh. I love the premise behind this song. And you can turn the lights off too. We don't have to have super. Yeah, you can turn those off. But the song we're about to sing is called Available. And I want you to pay attention real quick. Just not be a distraction for your neighbor for the next 5 minutes. Because when it comes to this charge of being different, stepping out this week and just choosing one thing, I want you to pick one thing you can do. Because everybody's different. Everybody's at a different point in their walk with God and their faith. Pick one thing that you can do just to be a little bit different this week, to push a little bit more, get a little bit more uncomfortable. And all that requires is this pledge, this declaration inside of your soul, and the song they're about to sing to say, God, I'm available. Here I am. I'm here for you, and I'm going to do something different this year, this week, today. That's the kind of decision that you can make tonight that will set you up for success. Do not hide what makes you different. Do not hide what God has given inside of you to change your world. Because you can do it. You don't need anybody else. You just need yourself. And the realization that God is with you all the time and strengthening you and giving you the power to do something different this year. With all eyes closed, all heads down. I'm going to pray, and I just want you just really quick in just a posture of receiving. If you could just put both arms out for me real quick, and we're just going to pray. And I want you to pray with me. I want you to pray. Even if it's the first time you've prayed in a long time, that's okay. Your prayer is just as powerful as mine. Just as powerful. It's not a pastor's prayer that saves you or charges you. It's your own. It's the belief inside your heart that says, I'm going to be different this week, this year. And pray and say, God, I'm available. I want to be used this week. And I want to take that dare to just be a little bit different. Have him show that to you tonight. God, we just thank you for each and every student in this room, God, with their arms stretched open, Lord. We're in a posture of surrender, God. In a posture of receiving. And God, we ask right now that your spirit would just come to us, Lord. That you would give us the strength and the courage to get uncomfortable, to be a little different, to see what happens when a teenager decides to take the charge to be a Daniel in their school, a Daniel in their home, God. We're here. We're available, Lord, and we ask tonight that you would just be with us, that you would show us the areas in our life that we need to increase, Lord, that we need to push a little bit more, to get that little bit more uncomfortable feeling, God. And we just pray that you would be with us this week, Lord. We thank you for each and every student in this room, God. And that's our prayer tonight, is here I am, Lord. I am available. I am available, Lord. Use us tonight, God.